Great. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody. I see Derek is with us again. Beautiful. How you doing, Derek? So first of all, I want to thank Derek actually and Hummer for inviting me to come and lead this particular discussion as we did last week. And we'll have, another two sessions again on Sundays. I think this is a great and magnificent idea. The fact that we can have an opportunity to have this discourse, share ideas, and hopefully move our own music industry in Canada forward as we dialogue with each other, come up with solutions, etc. So uh, I'm going to try to keep it moving a little bit, but if you do have a comment, I really like the idea that people can make their comments. I will manage it a little bit better than I did last week. I think we kind of ran out of time. Okay, Derek, I got you, man. Sorry, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, but yeah, so I'll try to manage it a little bit better to make sure that our discussion keeps moving and we get through some of the information. So the approach that I have taken is really one that kind of speaks more so to the singers and songwriters in terms of just information. But I know we have some people on that are sort of industry people and so on. So don't worry. What we'll do is we'll start off with the body of information that kind of just speaks to the artist ecosystem, and I've kind of centered it around a couple of functions, not moving into some of the ones that may be for people who have recording contracts with labels and so on. There's a additional um, ecosystem is expanded for those people, but I try to keep it kind of along the lines of the people who are not necessarily at that sort of recording star phase of life, but in the trying to get the music written, get it disseminated, and so on. And for those who are now up and coming and looking to build careers within it. So that's kind of my the folks that I kind of aim this at. But as I said, whoever is on the call, it doesn't matter. We can, expand and have further discussion as well. All right. So this week we're going to talk about, the idea of the artists building a community of support around them in what we can call the artist ecosystem. Uh, so just a few definitions, just so we're all on the same page with what we're talking about. So, for the purpose of our discussion, managers can be a lot of things, but I'm going to define a manager as a professional working in the industry whose primary role is to bring together and manage the professionals, volunteers, and businesses necessary to meet the artistic and business goal of an artist or record label. Music managers should be organized, excellent with people, have a good understanding of the music and the arts industries that exist today. And I say that exist today because, of course, when we're functioning in today's world, people who are managers really have to keep abreast as it's changing very, very rapidly. A manager will coordinate all aspects of artist projects, work with individuals and organizations such as agents, event promoters, publicists, talent booking agencies, lawyers, marketing professionals, etc., and record labels. If artists so happen to work hard and are able to gain some attraction from a record label. Managers, by the way, often work in teams. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Also, an agent we're going to decide is someone who books bands and artists, basically. Uh, they approach promoters and negotiate contracts for live performances. Agents will work with promoters to make sure that artists' needs will be met at the venue. Uh, an appropriate sound check is set up for the band, at the payment of the performance, and then if accommodation will be provided by the promoter, etc. Agents get artists in front of the right audiences to increase their profile. That's really, at the end of the day, what they're trying to do. Agents work closely with promoters and record labels to make sure artists get the desired exposure. We're also going to touch on publicists. A music publicist is someone who handles media and public relations on behalf of a music group or a musician. The music publicist usually works with the musician's booking agent, manager, and lawyer to ensure that the artist's image is always maintained. They may write press releases, hold special events, network with sponsors, create and utilize social media, posts, etc., cultivate relationships with people in the media so that it will benefit the artists that they're serving. Lawyers, uh, we're going to say that those are professionals in the field of law with a license to practice law. Okay, so not someone who was a lawyer and no longer practices, because if they're not licensed, none of the advice that they give um, they can be held accountable for. Okay, so somebody with a license to practice. In Canada, lawyers must pass the appropriate provincial bar exams prior to being licensed to practice and legally represent clients. Music industry lawyers often take additional courses of study to become experts in the music sector, or they might get there by experience. You know, they started off when they were a young lawyer in the office of a company that was a record label or something like that. But anyway, they cut their teeth in the music business, and so even though they didn't have perhaps another academic course of study, they can acquire a lot of the information by in actual experience and practice. They often further specialize in specific aspects of the music industry. So some lawyers, for example, may focus on copyright, contracts, music licensing. Some lawyers actually provide a full management service. In other words, they may have started off providing legal advice, and then as they got more and more entrenched in the music industry, they then expanded and provide a full management service, right? So that they will have perhaps a list of clients that they actually provide management for as well. Music marketing professionals are the last group that we're going to touch on, and these are professionals in the field of marketing who, through a combination of academic study, practical experience, as we evolve, it used to be that most music marketers cut their teeth working for either artists or working for industry organizations, record companies, and so on. That's changing a lot now, where there are people who, for example, can go to one of the accredited post-secondary institutions and actually study music marketing. They're professionals in the field of marketing who will help to stimulate or facilitate the demand for music products and strategies to ensure that knowledge of pricing, the sales environment, the music products being sold, the promotional tools available, all of these things come to bear and are used to enhance the success of the artist. So the objectives today really is to discuss the network of professional and other supporters that are important in nurturing artists on their journeys to success. To expand your knowledge of the music ecosystem, depending on where you are in it. There are some people who, may know various areas of it very well. The people who work in management may be very familiar with all of the pieces in the ecosystem because it kind of falls within the purview of their jobs. But I would dare say that there are still many artists, songwriters, etc., who perhaps don't understand necessarily all of the facets and facilities that can come to bear to assist them to move forward in their careers. We're going to explore some strategies in our discussion for growing your networks, depending on, as I said, where you are right now, and learning what the ecosystem needs from you as a musician. So I say musician, but as a musician, as a songwriter, wherever you are, producer, wherever you are in the business, what does the ecosystem need from you in order for the ecosystem to work best for you? And then we'll talk a little bit about building trust, which is a huge element of being able to function in the industry in such an ecosystem and get everyone working in the best interest of the artist, songwriter, etc. So let's talk a little bit about the role of managers. So managers can sometimes be what I call the be all and end all, in that they have perhaps I should say one of the widest range of job descriptions, if you'd like, in terms of who's in an artist or songwriter's ecosystem. Managers are there to advise on business strategy. They're there to administrate the artist's business practices, manage live performances, cultivate audience, helping the artist to grow fan base. They will also plan and schedule artist activities, book their daily schedules, negotiate deals with venues in terms of live performances, negotiate deals with live streaming opportunities in order to gain revenue for the artist. Represent the artist with agents, labels, casting directors, unions, negotiate tour arrangements. So as you can see, the role of a manager, I would suggest to any artist that, after yourself, the next person or next professional to bring on board would be a manager. Because as you grow, a lot of artists are self-managing, and it's not a bad idea to start out that way, because one of the upsides of that is that it certainly helps a lot of artists to get to understand what a manager is supposed to do. And then when they're in a position to expand their own business upward and include management, at least they're in a position to be able to be discriminatory with regards to choosing, one, a good manager, and two, as they're working with the manager, if they have familiar with what managers actually need from them and what is needed for success, then they can make sure that they also provide that because they understand the working relationship. I would say the relationship between the artists and the managers is probably the closest of all the people who are in the artist ecosystem. Many managers and artists work together for years and years, sometimes all of their careers. So with regards to administering the artist's business practices, what that looks like is that managers will often review contracts, budgets, other legal and financial documents. They will work with music publishers. They'll work with performing rights societies like ASCAP, BMI, in order for artists to be able to collect on their royalties. They'll hire industry lawyers if that particular level of expertise is required for something that they're doing on behalf of the artist. By the same token, they'll engage specialists in different areas of artists' business affairs in order to make sure that they, as managers, are able to provide the artists with the most competent, up to date, and strategically sound advice. With regards to live performances, I'm just touching on these, of course, each of these could be expanded into a tremendous amount of detail, but in the interest of time, we're kind of, just touching on them. With regards to live performances, managers will often source opportunities for bookings. Okay, they will eventually, over time, develop a network of agents, for example, that they may work through, so that as the artist's strategy calls for penetration in particular areas of the country or of the world, the managers are able to call on their resources, call on their network of agents, etc., to assist and source opportunities for bookings in live venues. They also negotiate with these booking agents. They negotiate with the event promoters. They negotiate with the venue managers sometimes clubs, restaurant owners, etc. Uh, the managers will often hire and manage the tour managers or the road managers. These are the people, of course, who, when artists are out on a tour, the ones that actually project manage the day-to-day events of the tour itself. Making sure that the musicians and artists have everything that they need in order to be able to execute it at the very highest possible level, and also vice versa. That um, what is needed by the venue, what is needed by whether it be publicists, etc. All of that is orchestrated by the manager in order for the implementation of all of the processes to have the maximum effect. At the end of the day, what we're looking at is the ability of artists, songwriters, etc., to get that product out to the market, get it in front of audiences, get it in the ears of audiences, and as you see, as we sort of evolve, there's also this opportunity that is now, we can label as an artist brand that is very saleable, and also is part of now what managers have to know how to market, which is the artist brand that may not necessarily have anything to do with the artist's music product, etc. But with that, I think we talked a little bit about this last week. Just with regards to the value that the artists in this will foster in whatever celebrity status they evolve, and also with regards to their mark and things like that. And all of this is wrapped up in um, the how the artist behaves, what they look like, etc., etc. The manager is also responsible for cultivating audience, helping the artist to grow their fan base, which means communicating with the existing fan base, hiring people, marketers, publicists, etc., whatever is necessary to help to expand that fan base. The manager will also see to it that the publicist, for example, is able to assist in cultivating a social media presence for the artist, because in today's world, there's very few artists that are going to have a measure of success with regards to marketing, publicity, etc., getting their product out to the market without a significant social media presence. The manager will manage live promotions, exclusive releases, meet and greet sessions, email newsletters, etc. Hire publicists, publicity agents. Um, Sometimes it's a full publicity firm or full marketing firm that'll participate in getting the artist as a product and the artist product out to the marketplace. So here are some of the characteristics of a great manager for those of you who may be self-managing at this point and looking to, to think about maybe bringing a manager on board um, in order to take what you're doing to the next level. Um, Here's some characteristics of a great manager. This is just from my experience, so you may have more to add to this list. Integrity, honesty, really good knowledge of business, but also an entrepreneurial spirit. They should be passionate. They should be always willing to build connections in the industry. The music industry is a very connected industry. Communications within it are extremely important, and anyone working in the capacity of management or publicists, marketers, etc. Connection. Okay, the manager should have incredible communication skills. Not only the skills to communicate with the artists, but also the skills to communicate with all of those people that can come to bear on the success of the artist. And nowadays, a manager definitely has to be computer literate and savvy. Working knowledge of the language of the music industry is important. Uh, Financial literacy is extremely important because often most managers are in a position where they are the ones guiding and assisting the artists in making financially strategic decisions. Connections, as I said, in the music industry, and of course, you know, I don't think anyone should engage a manager who isn't, at the end of the day, a lover of music. Because when it looks like all business and it doesn't have a happy balance with regards to the love of the music itself, um, it can have some very adverse effects. So, agents, sometimes called music agents, booking agents, etc. These are folks who work with artists and managers to schedule concerts, tours, in-person appearances, negotiate fees and contract for artist bookings, negotiate with book club or other live, negotiate and book the clubs or other live venue dates, secure opening acts, placement with more established acts. Derek, by the way, I'm hoping that when we get to discussion, you can pipe in because I've known Derek since I was a very young guy as a really incredible agent. So um, plan tours, schedule radio and television appearances, secure advertising deals, sponsorships, develop relationships with talent buyers, promoters, festival organizers, venue managers. Agents at the end of the day are at the center of what I call network, um, because it is their vast network of contacts with club owners, promoters, etc., that is the gold, if you like, of the agent's uh, task. It is the thing that allows agents to be successful or not. The profile I think of a great agent: a knowledge of all the music venues, all the routes, all the gigs, all the possibilities, and contacts, college dates, festivals, tours. Agents must also be skilled at marketing and promotion because often they are the ones that will liaise with the promoter on the other end. Also, contracts and negotiation, a thorough knowledge of booking contracts, options, bonuses, professional connections. As I said, those vast networks, written and verbal communication, organization, multitasking. Uh, Agents must be excellent negotiators. They must understand the marketplace and know what guarantees are appropriate for the artist. Superior communication skills. Publicists. They use communication skills to create and maintain an artist's brand. They assist the artist in maintaining their desired public image. Publicists may also assist in getting the artist's work and image to the desired market. Music publicists use public relations skills and media know-how to market the artist and the artist's work. Publicists represent the artist through press releases, arranging for interviews with the media, writing speeches, all keeping in mind the brand of the artist and what the strategy, the marketing strategy is that is being implemented. An effective publicist has public and media relations training, strong social media skills, as I said, especially in the time that we're in right now. None of it is happening without strong social media, strong communication skills, internet savvy, knowledgeable of a variety of media formats. More and more publicists are acquiring bachelor's or master's degree in public relations, communications, marketing, business, journalism, advertising, or other related fields, as the high degree of specialization that is evolving are driving that within institutions. So a lot of publicists now are looking to have post-secondary education in the fields before they
Okay, so I was saying maybe we could have a Google Doc, right?
Sure.
And start there.
Okay, I think
No, that's great.
somebody needs
I
to,
think if we have that Google Doc, maybe we
yeah,
can
just mute your
put some of the thoughts on the Jamboard as well. Maybe that
yeah,
could turn
mute your
into today.
microphone.
If we want to just even look at that Jamboard and
Okay.
say, because I'm not sure, Karen, if you have that.
Hi, can you mute your microphone, please? Thank you. Okay. So as I was saying, more publicists are, acquiring as the industry evolves and becomes more and more specialized. Publicists, are all acquiring um, post-secondary, I should say, education, at Ryerson, Sheridan, a variety of opportunities, Trebas, Harris. I don't want to start naming schools because I'm not promoting any in specifically, but just to say that, as it becomes more and more sophisticated, those people that are interested in some of these areas know that it's highly competitive. The information is shifting all the time, and so people are often looking at post-secondary education as a starting point in terms of grabbing some of that information. Publicists are able to speak uh, competently for their clients, may also create press releases and speeches, give advice on clients being able to engage with the media, et cetera, et cetera. Interviews, other important events. Sometimes the publicist is actually called upon to speak on behalf of the artist. So that means an artist who has a publicist must spend time making sure that the publicist has a really keen understanding of what the artist brand is, what their philosophy is, et cetera, et cetera. They play a very significant role. And then music industry lawyers. They are specialists. So make sure you choose appropriately. Not all lawyers are music industry lawyers. Because someone graduated law school or even practices law, it does not necessarily mean that they are appropriate to review your contract for you. Okay? Lawyers are specialists. I can tell you this firsthand, having in my younger life made this very same mistake. So remember that lawyer is a specialist. If you're looking to have a lawyer look at your contracts, etc., try to get a lawyer that is a music industry lawyer that has some experience in the area. And the best way I have found to get lawyers who are in the business is from recommendations. Search high and low, get get recommendations from people who've used particular industry lawyers before. Talk to other artists, speak to other people in the business. Do they know anyone? If you don't have a connection with a music industry lawyer, yeah, and you want to get to know one, look for a recommendation, okay? Because that way you'll be able to have someone who can say, yeah, I can vouch for my experience with them. And that's very important. Lawyers assist in translating from the legalese. As much study as I've had in business, I still today myself uh, have to get legal terms, languages on legal contracts translated to me because unless you're in that world and you're speaking that language every day, it can be a bit of a blind spot for people. So get a lawyer. They can also assist you in formulating your business ideas and translating the desires that you or your manager might have into legalese so that it can be um, palatable to the other sides, whether it's a company or whoever, to palatable to their lawyer. Okay? Lawyers are there to protect against blind spots, and they should be used all the time. I can't even stress this. The amount of people that I have known in my time in the music business that got into arrangements that went sour and then spent enormous amount of time, heartache, frustration trying to resolve it after the fact. get a lawyer. They're there to protect. Get a lawyer. Use them properly. Lawyers' fees can vary greatly, so make sure that you're getting the value for your money. Investigate. What do other lawyers charge for this? Etc., etc. So you have a gauge and an understanding, because legal fees are some to people who work in an industry like as an artist or songwriter, etc., where we are accustomed to putting in enormous amounts of time into something before even starting to see any results. Remember that that is not the world that lawyers come from. Lawyers are they expect to be paid, for their time, and they will bill per hour. So remember, holding the lawyer into a long conversation can sometimes be quite costly. The lawyer is not there to have casual conversation with. Lawyer is there to provide legal expertise, and so should be used accordingly. And given the fees that good lawyers charge, you don't want to engage them any longer than you need to. You want to make sure that all of the discussion you have with them or your manager has with them are pertinent to the issue at hand and is going to be addressed immediately. Okay?
Kwame, can I just interrupt for a second? I'm not sure
Yes.
if you wanted to share your screen. I just wanted to check in because you're not sharing your screen actually.
What?
Yeah.
You're not seeing my screen?
No.
Okay. That's just crazy. Did you gave me co-host rights to share it, right?
Yeah, you should be able to share it.
Okay, I do not understand that. So you haven't seen any of my screens since I started?
No.
Okay, let's try it again.
There you go.
Okay. Because I'm pretty sure that it said you're sharing your screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. I'll just continue.
Yeah, all good. Thanks.
Okay. And you saw it change just now, right?
Yep. They're
Okay.
flipping.
All right. So we were at music industry lawyers. So contracts are binding if they're legal documents, and they should not be navigated without legal advice. Lawyers often invest in the music industry and in artists. So sometimes, you may be able, I don't know how many lawyers are doing that now. It'd be interesting to kind of take a scan of that. But there are some lawyers who, once they've been in the industry for a while, they often invest themselves in artists, that they believe are investment worthy. And then we have marketing professionals. They implement a set of strategies, principles, actions that are meant to increase engagement or maximize the revenue to be gained from the selling of musical products and services. So just wanted to touch a little bit on in terms of artists' use of the people within their ecosystem. As I said, I didn't want to go too deep because I would suspect that the majority of people are within the realm of what we're talking about right now. It is important to treat your career and your music with the seriousness that it deserves. Okay, if you're going to spend time, as many of us do, in creating great music, writing songs, we put in a lot of hours, and our art deserves to be treated with a degree of seriousness, and it begins with us first as artists, right? We have to treat our career, we have to treat our music with the seriousness that it deserves. So the folks that you're going to engage, whether they're whether it's a manager, a publicist, a marketing person, it is important that you as an artist determine the criteria. What are the values that you want people to who work with you or who work in your interest? What are the values that you want them to have? Okay? What are the philosophies that must govern everyone who is in your ecosystem? You have to make it known to them. Listen, here are the set of principles with which I am guided. And it may mean that not everybody's a fit for you. It may mean that there's a really a person who everybody says, man, that is the person that you need to work with. He did so and so and so for this other artist that I know. But if that person doesn't fit into the philosophy, in the values that you have, in the long run, you may be courting a problem unless you're going to change your own values. So decide which of those are really, really important. Okay? If you're dealing with a lawyer and the lawyer is someone who is willing to operate in a little bit of a, blur the lines between what's legal and not legal and so on, and that's not the values that you have, don't do it. Right? Because remember, all of this is about building a team to navigate the ecosystem that you have to navigate in order to have some success. So in building that team, make sure that you are a team leader. Make sure that everybody who is in the team, they have a really good idea of what your philosophy is. What is your culture? And I don't mean culture as in, whether you're, African or European. I mean culture as in, what is the practices that govern your practice? Sorry, what are the values that govern your practice? Right? What is the culture, the business culture that you have, the arts culture? What is that? Right? That everybody understands that and that it fits with what you're doing. It's all wrapped up in the brand that you have. Okay? I'm for interviewing people because many folks, the first person that they have who is a manager may actually be someone who is close, who believes in them, who says, I'll volunteer to do this and this and this. I'll volunteer to do some of these tasks that are wrapped up, in what managers are supposed to do. So what I'm saying is, interview everyone who you're going to get involved. It does a couple of things when you interview people. One is it puts it on a very professional setting so that even the people that you're engaging know or feel certainly that you're serious and it's not just accidental that they're there, that there was actually a process and some criteria that they had to fulfill in order to be the person you selected, even if it's a volunteer. Okay? Be transparent. Act with integrity. Be willing to share the results of success. If you are self-centered, selfish, etc., it is very difficult to be successful in the music business because it requires teamwork. It requires a system of, I spoke today about the system that's close to the artist. But what about the ecosystem that also involves societies like the Toronto Blues Society and the things that the Blue Society will do for its artists, producers, etc. That's also a part of the ecosystem. And success have to be shared with the people who are close to you that help you to have success, but also the people who are not so close to you, the not-for-profit organizations that are supporting Canadian music or maybe supporting the type of Canadian music that you're involved in, etc., etc. There must always be a process of giving back. There must always be a process of sharing your success with other folks that are involved in the ecosystem. This is really, really important because, as I said, anyone who is selfish and believes that music is something that they can sort of, because they're a great musician, great songwriter, great singer, etc., achieve success without the support of others. I would love to meet that person because I don't know anyone like that. See what I said? Team, team, team. It's all about building a team. I promised last week that I will come back again and touch on copyright, just because it's such a significant way nowadays in which, because of the fact that a lot of revenue opportunities for artists are being left on the table because there's a lot of artists who define themselves by live performances and don't necessarily understand the way in which copyright laws are there to ensure that the benefits and revenue streams that are due them from the art that they create, that they should really make sure they organize themselves to understand it and to derive those benefits. So I just wanted to go over copyright again because, as I said last week, we kind of had to rush through it. So there's a board. I'm just a scan. There's a board called it's a regulatory board, right? And that is the Copyright Board. The Copyright Board establishes the rules by which royalties are to be paid, and it enforces Canada's Copyright Act. Now, Canada's Copyright Act was written probably before, I don't know, it's very, very old, certainly over 100 years old. And so because of that, some of the language in the Copyright Act is constantly being updated because, as we evolve. So for example, listen, even let's say, in the, 25 years ago, needing to have a Copyright Act, I should say, that protected artists from live streaming, their music being downloaded on the internet, that was non-existent. I remember when Napster, which for those, I might date myself, but I remember when when Napster first started making music available, and the uproar that existed at the time. And now look at where we're at. We're at live streaming. We're at the fact that the majority of music products are actually going to be sold via live streaming or on the internet in some way. Okay, so let's just go over now the various rights that exist. So I'm going to start with the creators and publishers' rights. Okay, and this is the right. So first of all, just to understand what a right is, the way that laws are written are that they speak to the right that an individual has, and then the opportunity for an individual to sell those rights and receive remuneration for the sale of the right. And that's really the position from which the copyright laws are coming, right? That when you create something, you have all the rights of ownership to it. And so if someone else, let's say, downloads it and listens to it, what just occurred is that the right that you have to it, you've now shared with someone else. And in order for that to occur, you have a right to compensation. You see? So just so you understand. So when they say rights, it's rights are something that can be traded. And in the case of music, people who are songwriters, musicians, record labels, etc., can trade the rights that they have by creating the product or by writing the song or recording it, etc. They can trade those rights to you, the listener, or to another person who's the listener, and they should be compensated according to the laws of Canada. And that's how. So I hope that's clear. We can talk a little bit more about it, but so we have creators and publishers' rights. These are the rights of songwriters, authors, composers, music publishers, to benefit financially from public performance of their songs. Now, those rights are collected by and administered by performing rights organizations and performing rights collectives. These often are not-for-profit organizations who've set themselves up to assist the artists in collecting their rights. SOCAN, for example, uses digital audio identification on each song now to monitor public broadcast and performance of song and then collect royalties for distribution to its members. So it's clear that in order for artists, songwriters, etc., to gain from this particular right, they have to be a member of one of the performing rights organizations. So in Canada, generally people sign up with SOCAN, okay? There are others in the US, I'm not going to touch on those, but let's just stick with SOCAN, right? Because it is the Canadian one. Sound Exchange collects royalties for all recordings that are played on non-interactive digital radio, okay? So I've kind of laid it out side by side here so that hopefully it could help to shed a little bit of light, okay? So SOCAN is responsible for when your song is played in live venues like clubs, concerts, festivals, etc., on radio and television, so commercial and non-commercial radio and TV, community college, etc., on internet radio, when it's used as background music, like, you know, you go to the restaurant and you hear the music that's being played as part of the sort of ambience of the restaurant, in retail stores, in hotels, also in dance and fitness studios where it's played for instruction, online streaming services like Spotify and so on. Sound Exchange is responsible for collecting those royalties when they're played on digital radio. Sound recordings played on non-interactive digital radio. This includes recordings, soundtracks made by actors, comedians, spoken word artists, musicians, etc. Okay, now neighboring rights. And I just want to clarify a little bit what neighboring rights are. So now if you can imagine that in the initial Copyright Act of Canada, it was really geared towards people who are authors, right? So when first musicians, etc., receive rights, the first right that was recognized was really the rights that the Copyright Act was more closely familiar with, which is the right of the people who wrote it, who wrote the song, etc. So in other words, it's like the author, yeah? So after that, there were people advocating and pushing for what about when we record a song, right? So now we're looking at when we record a song, the people who played on that recording, the people who own that actual master, the recording master, or the artists who performed on it, like, do they not have a right? And so what they viewed is those rights, okay, that were called, you know, performing rights, or they viewed that as being rights that live next door to the rights of the people who wrote it. That's why it's called neighboring rights. So I know there's a lot of confusion about this sometimes, and I've heard people saying, that neighboring rights means that, it's the rights that you have when your song is played in a neighboring country, and that's not true. It really is a legal description, a very poor one, I might add, because it sure as hell it has the potential of being very confusing. But think of it as if the rights of the author or the songwriter is one right, a right next to it, a right that is right next to that one is the right of the performer. And that's why it's called a neighboring right, right? A neighboring right because, when the song is played, there's the right of the songwriter, but then right next door to that is the right of the performer on the song, etc. That's why they're called neighboring rights. Okay, so neighboring rights is the rights of the performers on a recording and the labels or the people who own the master recording. So in Canada, ReSound is responsible for collecting neighboring rights. They distribute the royalties that come from those rights through Connect and also through SOPROQ, right? So one, Connect and SOPROQ, they distribute the royalties to the label. So if you're a record company, etc., who owns a song and that song is played and you're collecting the performing rights, ReSound distributes those performing rights to you. If you are a musician, okay, or the vocalist who sang on it, etc., those rights come to you through MROC or through ACTRA Recording Artists Collecting Society, called ACTRA RACS, and Artisti. So those are the three organizations that will distribute, that ReSound will distribute to distribute further to the people who played on the song, the singer, the musicians, etc. We can talk about this some more if it's still confusing, but I just wanted to make sure that people understand how this works, because it's a little pet peeve of mine, because I know from some of the folks I talk to that there's a lot of Canadian great songs and songwriters, musicians, etc., who are not making the best use of their products because they don't really want to get involved with this. It sounds for some people like a very confused world, but there's a lot of gold and money in their hills. Okay. 1 second, I'm just going to get this. Oops. All right. So, as I was saying, for radio, it's commercial and non-commercial radio, community, college, etc., paid audio, music channels, music streaming, non-interactive and semi-interactive services, background music, music played in restaurants, etc., dance, fitness studios, live, and also, by the way, music played at live events. So not the music that is being played live on the stage, but the music that may be recorded music that is being played at a live event, that also is covered. There's also a fee that can be collected from private copying. And this is administered by the Canadian Private Copying Collective. They distribute royalties now through ReSound to musicians and vocalists and record companies, through SOCAN to songwriters and music publishers, to SODRAC to songwriters and music publishers, to CMRRA, and so on and so. So here's how that works. What they do is administer a private copying fee to compensate songwriters. So for example, all the manufacturers of recordable CDs, blank audio materials, etc. All the people import those into the country, etc. They are charged a fee, right? And that fee is then spread to compensate songwriters, composers, musicians, etc. Because we know that folks are taking the music that we have and without paying a fee for that, they're actually going to download it and listen to it. You know, the way how people will take copy music from another CD or put together those mixes, you know, that people like to have and share with each other and so on. Also want to tell you a little bit about In Tandem, which is a joint venture between SOCAN and Resound. What it does is simplify the licensing of music for Canadian businesses that use recorded music, like restaurants and so on. Okay? In Tandem Music and Licensing Professionals, they administer licenses that are common to both SOCAN and Resound for the use of recorded and live music in public settings. Businesses are facilitated then in their efforts to use music, so they're encouraged to use music for their customers, but they're able to do it legally, ethically, and responsibly with the right remuneration going back to the songwriters and performers whose music that they're using. And then there's something called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that governs a large commercial media interests like YouTube in order to ensure proper compensation to artists. So that's as much as I had in mind to present today. So let's talk. And I want to again thank Derek and Amma for inviting me.
Hey, Kwame.
Derek, I'm almost in pain watching your hand like that, bro.
Yeah, that's it's a little action I had done on Friday for a trigger finger. If you ever get a trigger finger,
I've heard of it. Yeah.
You can have it treated with a needle, and then if the needle doesn't work, they take it a little more seriously. And I had an operation on my hand, so I'm typing with disability. There's a couple things that popped up in the chat there. One was a point I raised, and maybe you can clarify that I've heard that there's money on the table with satellite royalty collection, that people are not aware of how to go after that. But Ted had also made a comment or a question about neighboring rights. Do they include the arranger as well?
That's a good question. So first of all, one thing is clear, and that is that they include, yes, they do. Yes, they do. They do, because, so for example, in the case of, let's say it's a master that's owned by a recording label, right? They will include, and if you notice in the list of people that they have to, when they register, they have to put who the arranger is. So that person also collects royalties as well. Because you can have different arrangements, right? So, let's say you had a song, it was recorded. So it's recognized that that arrangement of the song by that arranger would contribute to the success of the song, right? So in that way, the arranger is also compensated in the neighboring rights as well. So the arranger, the performer, etc. Yeah, thanks for raising that. That is true.
So what do you think about the money on the table with satellite? I hear random comments from people. Somebody gave me an example of some ridiculous SOCAN check that came in from international activity. I can't identify the group, but
Yeah.
it was a $50,000 check that came in.
Yeah.
Somebody from our community, and I was shocked. I've just actually met the head of international relations at SOCAN, Catherine Saxberg, and we're going to invite her to the Blue Summit. And it's interesting. Her job, she said, was half diplomacy, handling relations with the other PROs internationally, and half bill collector. Like she's out chasing money for
Yeah.
Canadian artists in
Yep.
Germany or Jamaica or wherever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah,
do.
no, and that's one of the reasons I think we really just need to become more savvy. Like, we're a small population in Canada, but what would I say, our opportunities, especially now that music has taken on the form that it has, and it's not so much traveling right now, our opportunities lie in those markets, right? And the fact that we have such a diverse and eclectic people, and what we produce is fairly unique. You know what I mean? And I've always kind of known that. I remember talking to Ben. I used to play with him a little bit. Madagascar Slim,
Yes.
right? Remember Ben? And
Oh, I'm in touch with Slim. He's living up north of Thunder Bay, and he's still very active with Tricontinental.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I remember talking to him and him telling me about. He says, like, man, he says, I was kind of unaware, but he says in Germany, like, they love my music, right? Because that to me is how it's going to go, and we need to be more savvy. So it's not surprising that your colleague was indicating that she's spending so much time really tracking down money, like following the money. And I think we need to be more and more savvy of that. I love that. When I hear that, I love that, because I actually think it's one of the greatest opportunities for Canadian artists and Canadian songwriters.
She said that her gig was actually only 8 years old. That before that, things had been somewhat ad hoc, that they had these an honor system with the various colleagues internationally, and some were better than others. And in fact, some of the Europeans, when they heard about Canada getting organized this way, were quite impressed that they didn't have a dedicated international affairs person, so they kind of copied our lead. But I'm not sure if we've addressed my question about satellite, and maybe we could go to gallery view, and just in case there's other people who want to show their faces today.
Yeah, I'm in gallery view, and maybe somebody can shed some more light on the satellite.
You need to stop sharing your screen, Kwame, but let me see if I can do it for you from here.
Okay, hold on. Stop share. I got it.
There you go.
Okay.
Right?
Yep,
Good.
that's good.
I
Okay,
see some pals here. I mean, Ted is working here locally with Blackburn and a bunch of other groups he mentioned the last session. Ken is out in BC and managing. He's a manager agent. We're working with Hound Dog, Harp Dog, not Harp Dog Taylor, and Sugar Brown and some other people.
Okay, nice.
Jay, we know. Karen, I looked up her name, who is with us today. It looks like she's involved in the gospel community. Welcome, Karen.
Oh, I know Karen. Hi, Karen.
Ted, you said something addition to this topic. I wasn't sure what that reference was, because it was.
Yeah. What I was just on the topic of arranger, this is just something from a very personal aspect over my career, is in terms of the neighboring rights. When somebody goes beyond arranging and is actually composing, say, horn lines for a song, any advice on that particular subject matter? Because I mean, there's always two approaches to it. It's either, you charge a flat rate, or it's points, on the royalty kind of thing. Is there any guidance that you might say on that? Because I've always gone with the flat rate, and I know that points is the key, really.
Right.
So when you talk about sustaining revenue.
Exactly. So from that perspective, Ted, I would suggest that, if you're if what you're doing is really a key part of that particular sound, the brand, so for example, just to use, maybe a band that we're all familiar with, right? So the person who arranged Earth, Wind, and Fire horns, right, which is really unique at the time anyway, right? The person who arranges Earth, Wind, and Fire horns, I would expect them to be having points.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you know, it's it's definitely the way I'm going now. Let's put it that way. So I was just curious
Yeah.
about that with neighboring rights, because that ultimately, does that fall under the category of songwriter at that point, because you are composing counter
No.
melody, or does it just fall under, like, it's not like overall songwriting, but a contributing partner, right? Because, you know, you only use a teaspoon of yeast, but you can't make bread rise without it, right?
Yeah, so up until this point, that's a really moot point, vague point, I should say. Up until this point, the people who are horn arrangements and so on haven't really been credited as songwriters. Okay. Now, as I said, if you're you know, someone who is like what you write is going to be such a unique part of this particular presentation. When you hear that on the record, you're like, yeah, that's Ted Peters, right? You know, I'm saying if it's that if it's that much a part of the whole project, then I would say that when you are negotiating, you would negotiate for your points at that time, because typically it's the people, when you look at neighboring rights, right? There's a sheet that gives all the information with regards to the song and all of the people who are eligible for royalties, etc. And that's where you want to be. You want to be on the sheet that says, hey, you know what? This person has a certain amount of points because, you know, they were the arranger or they were the horn arranger, and, you know, etc. They're a part of this process, and, you know, this is what we negotiated. So that would be the time.
Well, thanks, man. It just, you know, it's funny you mentioned Earth, Wind, and Fire. I think about September without that opening horn line. What would it be?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking about when I said that, right? Because, you know what I mean? Like, you know, that guy, I think his name was Charles Stepney or something like that. He, you know, yeah, he made one of the key elements of Earth, Wind, and Fire's success is that horn, the horn sound, right? And the arrangements and so on. So I'm saying if that's what it is, then I would say an arranger should want to be compensated accordingly, right? So that's a negotiation that you would do.
Well, thanks very much, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and good luck with the negotiations. I hope you do it. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So were there any other comments, or Derek, I think you said you had another point. Just unmute yourself, Derek.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry. I see that Jay's actually brought up something about publicity, and Sarah French, who's sort of a primary publicist in the blues community. The relationship is very, very valuable. Any thoughts on this from others? I'll offer my thoughts first, Jay, and agree that, in fact, when I'm doing consulting for artists, I put publicists in front of agent, manager, or anything else. In fact, one of my phrases that I use is that you don't need a manager until you've got too much money and you need somebody to help you manage your money. You know, Bernie Finkelstein managing Bruce Cockburn makes a lot of sense because there's a lot going on for Bruce. Greg Gooding, I don't know that person, but oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know Greg.
Is he kind of working in jazz a bit?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Gary Kendall does publicity for people in a blues specialty way, kind of local, but very thorough. He's I think he only does it when he's not busy, and of course he's not gigging a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But he keeps his contacts up. Sarah and I have been talking lately, and she's actually scaling back a bit from her, you know, what was active. Of course, Eric Alper is hyper active and has a number of clients: Stony Plain, True North, and other individuals that we see. I think Steve Hill has retained him independent of a label. But Eric Alper is kind of a primo publicist. There are others that I send to people. Jay, I'm curious, you say that this Greg chap is good for you, but I'm not sure about your question. I don't know, maybe if Ken wants to step into the chat about how he handles publicity for his clients, but I think it's crucial.
Maybe, sorry, Derek, maybe Jay can add a little bit more just in terms of what specific, because I did mention about working with a publicist, but I'm interested to know what particular aspect of working with a publicist he wanted to.
Hi guys, and thank you. Yeah, no, I actually I was going to agree. I was going to type it, but I'll just say it. I was going to agree with what Derek had said, which is I'm basically self-managed and don't have a lot of money as it stands right now. Anyway,
Yeah.
The future hopefully will hold better, but I think having somebody like Sarah, and I mean in her case, at least for the way that I've worked with her, is it's kind of on a project basis. So I had an album release, and she did a lot to help promote it, to generate airplay and get some good interviews and reviews. So I found that was really valuable, and I did feel like I kind of agree with what Derek's point was, which is you can engage a publicist, especially if it's on kind of a piecemeal basis like that, before you need a manager or other kind of longer term relationships. I think that was
absolutely
what I was getting at. I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. You see, listen, once people understand, like, okay, here's what's possible in my ecosystem, right? Now, to be quite honest with you, I still recommend that that perhaps one of the first people that you bring on board is a manager. And the reason I'm saying that is that if you're transitioning to really taking your business to the next level, then what you'd like to do is, as much as possible, be able to focus more on elevating the actual production of the art, and have someone, if possible, take on some of the things that you now do with regards to self-management. You see what I mean? To me, just from a business standpoint, no, this is very flexible because it depends. If you're someone who really, just by nature, have a lot of business savvy, etc. I know a lot of artists who are really, really talented business people. In other words, if they weren't being the artists, they'd be good managers too, right? So if that's the case, okay, well, maybe Jay, you might be in that category, you know what I mean, where it makes sense for you to continue to be your own manager, so to speak. And in that case, the way you would use those other people in your ecosystem is you use them when you need them. So if you need Greg Gooding to do something because you're putting out a particular product, or you want to engage a publicist or even a lawyer, right? You might call the lawyer in, and so on. And so you build a group of people around you that you access when you need them, right? That keeps your costs down. You're not paying anybody retainers and so on. So sure, right? But I would say that if you don't know the business that well, that one of the things that you might want to do, like I say this to young people, as you're coming up as an artist, are there other young people who are in your circle who want to do business, who are studying business? Because as you're learning the business, those are the people that you maybe need to be encouraging to consider management. Because there's nothing better than having a manager who is somebody who, y'all came up together from back in the day, as and so and so, and you have an incredible relationship, and they know business, because that's just as you're passionate about music, they're passionate about business, right? And speaking of back in the day, so Greg Gooding, right? I have to tell you, we've been friends since I was not yet 12. He was my first friend in Canada when I migrated here. So Greg and I, for example, we've been like that all our lives. Okay, so some over 50 years of relationship. We played in our first band together and so on. And over the years, right, we will always liaise. And I say that to say that it's really about building networks, and building trust, which is another thing I'd like to talk about, but we can get to that after.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's good. I think it was a good point there that you made, that you kind of have to look at your own skill set and say, what are the things that you need to leverage. So
Yeah.
for me, engaging with somebody like Sarah, who has the relationships with radio and those kinds of people, I can do a lot of stuff myself. I can, I have some skill in web design and some other things, so I can do a lot of those things. So I wouldn't hire somebody for those things until
Right.
I really
Yeah.
get busy and need it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll just jump back in because there was something about agents where I lost track of who asked if there was a published list of agents, because people were looking, and I see agents and managers kind of lumped together at MMF, the Managers Forum,
Yeah.
where managers are also being agents in certain cases. There are resource lists at some of the industry associations like SEMA, the Music Industry Association. I think they have a drop down for resources, and Music Ontario. It's something that we're interested in at the TBS in terms of making information available for answering this question. But in blues, there's not a lot of agents. I mean, everyone in this community knows Brian Slack in Quebec because he's a manager, festival producer, and an agent. And he kind of is significant in Quebec, which is an understatement. And Nikki Rochford at AIM, handles Digging Roots and some other people. The Pecan people handle some blues artists, in the blues community. It's tricky, and it has a lot to do with just how much financial return there is for the, Colin James has no trouble getting an agent because commissions on his gigs pay for somebody's mortgage. And Sue Foley, as you come down the hierarchy of artists, a lot of us know Downchild's agent Todd Littlefield in Ottawa. I think he has some secondary clients as well as Downchild. And this conversation is useful for us as Hum and I work towards the Blues Summit in January, because these are topics that are ongoing and of interest in the community. But there's a shortage of agents in the blues community, and Ted's raised his hand. Go for it, Ted.
So, Derek, on this topic, just something interesting, because I did post in the chat earlier too, because I have previously explored the possibility of going directly to Trevis, for example, because Kwame, you brought up Trevis, Harris, etc. Not advocating for anyone, of course, but I have been in contact with their enrollment officers with regards to the specific artist management program. Now, this was most recently within the last, I'd say, 5 years, but there hasn't been any students in that program through there in Toronto. And I think there was 2 applicants in Montreal at my last inquiry. I don't know about Harris, but I guess this is something that would be interesting. Is there an opportunity there possibly for TBS to liaise with these schools with Blues Summit for graduates or interns, or, any of these, like, as a possible incentive for these people coming through it?
Well, I'm working with about 4 or 5 clients, and my agent for Cobotown is Frank Horn in BC, and he's fantastic. He's the best agent I've ever worked with, and he has 6 clients, and he won't take anybody else on. I work with Kune, who have Station Blue in Montreal, who are primarily a classical agency, but they have a bunch of world music and jazz. But there is training going on, and this is a great topic, at the community colleges at Centennial and the couple that you mentioned, Seneca, Humber, et cetera, et cetera. Virtually all Ryerson has a creative industries course. And I've gone and spoken at a lot of these community colleges where they're looking for some kind of hands-on, and Harris is known for really delivering that. I'm actually on the advisory for Durham College for their music management program. And the students are leaving there and they want to work at Live Nation and Universal.
Right.
They want to work where the money is, and they are attracted to the bright lights. And you know, when I saw 24th Street Whalers come out of Humber, you know, a really strong, hot young blues band, I went, wow, Humber's supporting the blues. And you know, there's been other examples because you know, there's far too many jazz musicians who are coming out of Humber and not getting any work, not knowing how to handle their business. Homa, I think we might want to do something on the website with just dropping in some of the courses in the resources thing that we want to develop there, just to Ted's response there. I've researched some of this recently and know some of the teachers. And it's, you know, Rob Bowman's very famous, of course, at York University for teaching. Kwame, where did you study? Did you
York.
work in York? And was it
I think Rob might have been in one of my classes.
Well, not teaching.
No. I think if I remember correctly, I think he did go to York at one point, and I think he might have been. Is he from here?
Yes, but Rob is a teacher. He's a prof at York, and
No. But hey, Derek, look, I have a gray beard, right? Like, no. I think Rob was in one of my classes when I was at York.
Wow.
As a
Well,
student.
I know, you know, when I first met Rob, he was teaching at George Brown. He did his master's and his PhD at Memphis State. And you were now engaging with Maliko about his book, The Last Soul Company is the name of the new book.
Right.
He's just published that might be of interest to Karen, because Maliko is all about gospel. But Ted, you say you're a Humber grad?
Yes, a long time ago.
I experienced one of our former managers, the predecessor of Homa's at that desk at the TBS was Tim Desolé. And Tim came out of Humber. He was a guitar player. He was teaching, struggling. He had a couple of interests in some other projects. And he's now, like, he's on the board of Folk Music Ontario and a couple other spots because he gave up performance in favor of management. And
right. Yeah, that's not uncommon. But, you know, I was thinking, Derek, that like, just to give you a frame of reference, who sat in my class that you may know now at York in my music class is Underhill.
Richard, yeah, from Shuffle Demons.
Yeah,
a self-managed, classic.
Yeah, he and I, we literally were in the same music classes.
Yeah.
And yeah, and in fact, that whole Shuffle Demons group with Mike Murley, and they were all my classmates. And so the thing is this, right? I think what we have to look at is how do we, if we understand that there's a gap in the ecosystem, then we have to, I believe, begin to take steps to remedy that gap. So for example, some of the people who are saying, hey, you know what, I've got this roster of clients, don't really want to do any more, et cetera, et cetera. You know, is it possible that we can set up a program that will get some of these younger people who won't get their chance to actually get experience and cut their teeth unless they have mentorship, right? So is it possible that we can set up a mentorship program where some of these folks have an opportunity to work with, the people who are experienced managers and so on. But we do have to do something to ensure that we are going to have another generation of managers, right? That's why I tell people all the time, those friends that you have around you who say, "Oh man, I just love the music. I want to do something. What can I do to help you? I can't play an instrument, but I am, and they love business." Listen, encourage them, because what we're not doing, I think, is we're not spending enough time really publicizing the opportunities that there are within the industry. We focused it so much on the artists, and we focused it really on live playing, so that we haven't really even gotten, which is, as you could tell, is one of my pet peeves. We haven't gotten even the musicians and songwriters themselves a really good understanding of all of the possibilities that exist for their talent. How many people are actually looking at working on film scores? How many people are looking at, the amount of money that could be made from sync rights, and things like that. So I think that one of the things, perhaps, from certainly the organizations like the Blues Society perspective, is to start to look at, the ecosystem as a whole, and where there are gaps, what are the strategies that we can start to talk about putting in place to make sure that we remedy some of these gaps. Because at the age I am and experience that I've had now, I know that there was a time when we were very tainted, and we thought, oh no, if you do this, it will never work. People are just going to go where the money is and all that. But you know what? I could tell you now that it does work. It does work when you come out with programs that take young people and encourage them to enter in particular parts in the industry, where you support them in terms of their learning and so on. I think that we need to do that. We need to do that in order to have the industry that we want to have in a decade.
There's a couple things that come to mind, and one is showing up in the chat there, Kwame, where the Canada's Music Incubator program, and our HUMA's predecessor, Alice Selwood, took that course, and I've heard a lot of people speak highly of it. It can be expensive, but it's also subsidized. Certainly, I've heard Harris is very expensive for people, but I've hired people out of that program. Natasha Emery, who went to the city, came out of Harris. But Diana Braithwaite is working with the TBS on developing some strategies for the Black community in particular, on the topic of, where's the Black community in relation to blues. And I want to connect you guys, because we've just got approval for the working group that she's going to oversee. She's still out in BC with Chris, but they're coming back in the spring, and we're about to move forward on that. It would be interesting if you could be involved, and I need to talk to you about that regardless, just because of some strategic planning stuff for the TBS.
Okay, good.
Trombone Shorty, there's more stuff in the chat there.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Trombone Shorty, Ted, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, I actually met him because it just so happens that the year that I was with my daughter in New Orleans, because she went to school in Loyola in New Orleans, and the year that I was there and went to the jazz festival, you know how every year they sort of choose a person that is kind of, I guess, the ambassador of the festival or whatever. That year it was Trombone Shorty.
Awesome guy.
Yep.
Huma, we do need to cap this, don't we? I think because we want to make it digestible for the future viewers on YouTube and Facebook. Huma, if you could just come back in and explain that, because I'm a little disappointed that we don't have more people here today, but I know that we're going to have uptake after the fact, which is the way social media is working these days. Not everybody can park on a Sunday afternoon, but they come back and we make it available. Ken, are you saying you took the coalition course? Okay, he did. Cool. Well, we certainly appreciate that you're in the community, and maybe we can talk to you about planning for the Blues Summit as we go along, because you're a rare beast in the community, and we want to hear what you think as we go forward planning the conference, assuming that all goes well with our COVID dilemmas.
Yep. Wow, that time really does go very quickly. My goodness. But I want to thank you all again, Derek, you and Hama, for inviting me. I am very passionate about making a contribution to our music here in Canada, and what we can do. We are we're in a very unique circumstance, given having a small population, vast geography, and all of that. But I think that I have a lot of hope because of the fact that things have gone actually in the way they have right now, with so much is possible with regards to the online opportunities for our music. And I truly believe that because of the diversity we have in Canada and the tremendous musicians that we have, that there's great opportunities there. I want to see, Canadian musicians of all genres engaging all of the possibilities, right? I want to go to see a film and hear, blues music from Toronto. It's the soundtrack.
What can we look forward to next Sunday? And I'll just show you guys my happy little finger. That's the finger that's got the big problem.
Right.
They painted a little face on my finger, but
Okay.
it's very swollen.
Right.
Huma, you still there? I know Huma's moving.
So next Sunday, I can share a little bit. Next Sunday, we're really going to talk about, just revenue generation. So we'll look at grant writing, because I know that that's a big issue for some people, because we do have a system that had somewhere some people are supported, at least in terms of a project form, by opportunities that might exist and so on. So, what are these people like the Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, what are they actually looking for, when we go to write a grant? What should we be thinking about, I know so many artists, and I was one of them, who, spent years in the early days thinking that, when we were applying for grants, that, there were these set of items about ourselves that, and we needed to represent in this way, when, to a certain degree, most people who are reviewing grants are looking at a specific set of criteria. In other words, the grant itself. Anyway, I won't give the workshop now. That would be a mistake. But yeah, so I'll look at that. I'll look at other forms of revenue that are available to artists, just in terms of what we can use to propel ourselves forward, and look at, in varying degrees. The new artists are looking at a particular kind of revenue stream, whereas other, artists in mid-career have different streams, and later on, of course, we hope everybody gets an opportunity to have sort of some of the larger revenue streams that come from recording and other things and so on. So that's what we'll be looking at next week. And yeah.
Huma, you put in the Facebook link, and maybe you can help us sign off and tell people how they can tell their friends about catching this session.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Again, it's a rainy Sunday, so I hope it was a rainy Sunday.
It is.
So you can, for the people who are here already, it will be the same link to join again next week. But you can help us spread the word by just copying and pasting that Facebook event page, and help us reach more musicians and your friends. That would be very useful. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you so much again, Kwame, for today. And
thank you.
we will be uploading, like we did last week, the further notes and the recording of this session to the website. And we'll be circulating.
Okay. Be blessed, everybody.
Thank you.
Good else.
Thanks very much, everyone.